an accident. This is a choice. Who deserves direct engagement and who gets managed through press statements. When you talk to the LA Times about people, you control the narrative. You get to frame the issues on your terms, with your spin, filtered through journalists who may or may not push back. But when you show up to a town hall, you face real questions from real people experiencing real problems. There's no PR buffer. There's real accountability. This pattern of being available to corporate media, but unavailable for community dialogue, sends a clear message about whose voices matter and whose don't. It's the kind of disrespect that hides behind busy schedules and prior commitments, but the community sees right through it. If these issues are important enough to discuss with the LA Times, they're important enough to discuss directly with the people living them. Anything less isn't just disrespectful, it's a fundamental failure of leadership and accountability. Mr. Pizarro says in the LA Times interview, I need to go to the supermarket in Pasadena or Altadena and be able to look people in the eye. We want to do the right thing for our community. You had a chance to look folk in the eye at our town hall meeting last week, but you didn't show up. And then we invited you for a one-on-one conversation here at the station, but you have yet to confirm. So please, please stop with the gaslighting. With the KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Tavis Smiley, and as always, we welcome your feedback.
The blackness, keep on. Never say die, keep on. Blackness, keep on. Never say die, keep on.
You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey, your host and White House correspondent, not there, but here in LA with you in afternoon drive time on a rainy Monday, but with you nonetheless. I'm in touch, and so you be in touch. Be sure to follow me on all the social media platforms at Dr. Nii-Quartelai. Just type in Dr. Nii-Q, D-R-N-I-I-Q, and there I am, fresh for you to follow. Also, be sure to download the KBLA app to listen to us live or on demand, or if you're feeling fancy, just tell Alexa to play KBLA Talk 1580, and there we are for your listening pleasure. Last but not least, be sure to subscribe to A More Perfect Union podcast. That way you can take us everywhere you go. Standing in line on Black Friday, or if you're behind your keyboard on Cyber Monday, or even better, as you're doing your research to figure out which organizations you want to support on Giving Tuesday, you can have us right there in your ear, just in the palm of your hand. All right. Now it's time for your national news roundup. It's time for you to decide the good, bad, and ugly headlines of the day. And kicking us off, acting FEMA head resigns. Yeah, NBC News is reporting that David Richardson, the acting administrator of the Federal Emergency Management Agency, resigned today after roughly 6 months leading the agency. This was confirmed by two administration officials. You see, Richardson's short time as head of FEMA, it came during a pretty turbulent chapter for the agency. Remember, President Trump's administration has proposed major cuts to its budget, and Trump in June publicly called for the agency to be phased out after hurricane season winds. After hurricane season winds down at the end of November. In a statement today, FEMA and the Department of Homeland Security, which oversees the agency, they expressed sincere appreciation to Richardson for his dedicated service. But Richardson on Monday, just today, said that he agreed to be acting director during a challenging time, saying, quotes, "I agree to be acting administrator through hurricane season when others wouldn't. Hurricane season ends on December 1st. And since the danger has largely passed, I can now leave for other opportunities." During his time as FEMA chief, Richardson was heavily criticized for his slow response to, remember those catastrophic July floods that devastated Texas's hill country? Richardson couldn't be reached for 24 hours after raging floodwaters killed more than 130 people on the 4th of July, including 27 girls and counselors at Camp Mystic, a Christian youth summer camp. Now, look, I don't know how many people get to keep their job after that. I don't know. Somebody asked ChatGPT, somebody asked Siri, somebody asked Alexa, ask somebody. Because I don't know who gets to keep their job after that sort of mishap. I mean, the negligence abounds. You ain't available for 24 hours as floodwaters killed more than 130 people, and you get to keep your job? I mean, and who allows somebody to stay in their job after that? This is the acting head of the Federal Emergency Management Agency. That means that your phone could ring at any point in time because there could be a federal emergency. You ain't available for emergencies for 24 hours and you get to keep your job? I don't know where they do that. But in other news, I can tell you, New York is where people decide to step to you if they feel like you're not doing a good enough job. That's exactly what's happening right now. The Greer is reporting that Hakeem Jeffries has been challenged to a 2026 primary by a 27-year-old New York councilman. That's right, U.S. Representative Hakeem Jeffries, a Democratic leader in the U.S. House, is facing a primary challenge in next year's 2026 midterm elections. Chai Osei, he's a 27-year-old New York City councilman. He filed paperwork today as a candidate to represent New York's 8th congressional district. As the leader of the Democratic Party, Jeffries, who has represented the 8th district in Brooklyn since 2013, he hopes to become the first Black Speaker of the House if Democrats win back the majority in the 2026 election. Now, Jeffries, 55, will now have to compete against Osei, a Democratic socialist aligned with New York City Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani. The challenge arises as the Democratic Party is facing some political divisions over its response to the Trump administration. That was most recently illuminated after some Democrats in the U.S. Senate voted with Republicans to end the historic 43-day government shutdown without a deal. So they shut down the government for 43 days and then reopened the government with Republicans without a deal to extend healthcare subsidies for Obamacare, also known as the Affordable Care Act. In a statement, a spokesperson for Congressman Jeffries says he welcomes the challenge by Osei, saying that Leader Jeffries is fighting hard to lower the high cost of living and address the Republican healthcare crisis and combat corruption and win back control of the House for the good of the country. Osei has been rumored to challenge Jeffries for weeks. An internal poll of New York voters found that Leader Jeffries holds a commanding 50-point lead over Osei. And 74% of voters polled said that Jeffries is doing a good job as U.S. representative. 69 view him favorably, and 69% said that they would probably or definitely vote to reelect him. And so even if they do, it looks like the New York council member is not going to make it any easier. And many people out there would say, nor should he. And so I'm sure all eyes will be on the 8th district in New York in the 2026 primary. Moving along, a man who had murdered, a murder conviction he wins an election as the New Orleans chief criminal court record keeper. CBS News reporting that a man who was just elected to serve as New Orleans chief criminal court record keeper has an extraordinary personal connection to the role. Calvin Duncan, who is 62 years old, he spent 3 decades in prison before his wrongful murder conviction was vacated. He will take office as the city's newly elected clerk of criminal court in January, despite state challenging his past. Duncan fought for decades to clear his name after being convicted of carrying out a 1981 fatal shooting. Duncan, a Democrat, later uncovered evidence that police officers lied in court and had his conviction tossed out by a judge in 2021. It's worth noting that Duncan won with 68% of the vote, according to the unofficial returns from the Louisiana Secretary of State. We love second chances. We love stories of people just sort of remixing their life, right? There's a lot of folks who I'm sure have had that experience. And the last thing they're thinking about is serving the community by becoming a public official. Well, Mr. Duncan has chosen to do that. And with 68% support from the community, it is so. It is so. And so we hope that in the coming weeks and months that we have a chance to talk to Mr. Duncan right here on A More Perfect Union, because that, y'all, is in part what a more perfect union can look like. When we talk about the leaders on the front lines that are doing the heavy lifting, that includes folks like Mr. Duncan. When we come forward, we're switching gears. You know how much I enjoy talking to authors. Well, you don't want to miss my conversation with Matthew Davis, talking about his new book, A Biography of a Mountain. It is a story about not just Mount Rushmore, but how we memorialize American history. This is a very timely and important book. More with Matthew Davis when we come forward. You're listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.
You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
If you've been diagnosed with moderate to severe plaque psoriasis, this is what it sounds like to be 1,000,000 miles away. Imagine being 1,000,000 miles away. Tremfya Kuselkumab, taken by injection, is a prescription medicine for adults with moderate to severe plaque psoriasis who may benefit from taking injections or pills or phototherapy. With Tremfya, clearer skin is possible. In clinical trials, at least 70% of patients saw at least 90% clearer skin at 16 weeks. Results may vary. Tremfya is also indicated for adults with active psoriatic arthritis. Serious allergic reactions and increased risk of infections and liver problems may occur. Before treatment, your doctor should check you for infections and tuberculosis. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, flu-like symptoms, or if you need a vaccine. Ask your doctor about Tremfya. Call 1-800-526-7736 or visit tremfya.com.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 reminds you, when we fight, we win. The Youth Justice Coalition is challenging America's addiction to incarceration and discrimination. YJC works to dismantle policies leading to mass incarceration, law enforcement violence, and the school-to-prison pipeline. Their approach? Transformative justice, community intervention, free LA high school, legal defense, and system monitoring. YJC promotes safety without relying on prisons. Their goal? Prevent system contact and help people exit the system through direct action, advocacy, and education. Want to get involved or need help? Call 323-235-4243. That's 323-235-4243. Join YJC in creating change. When we fight, we win. KBLA Talk 1580, your voice for justice. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
The California Crusader newspaper would like to thank all of our subscribers for their support throughout the years, proudly serving the South Los Angeles and South Bay areas for more than 40 years. The California Crusader is a multicultural, Black-owned, adjudicated newspaper that focuses on providing newsworthy information to the people in our community. We're constantly looking for ways to assist businesses in our community to connect with our subscribers. We provide low-cost, effective ways to promote your business with our reasonable and affordable advertising rates. You can participate by suggesting, sharing, and submitting your stories on the California Crusader newspaper Community Share Facebook group page, or visit our website at cal-cruise-news.com. That's calcruisenews.com. Then click on the Submit Now button located on the top right corner of the homepage, or text CCN to 42828. Again, text CCN to 42828. The California Crusader newspaper, working together to build a better community for our future. Subscribe today.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. If you need help getting your resume in order, finding job training, or landing a job, we've got 3 great options for you. First, the City of Los Angeles has worksource centers across the area offering free job support. The California Workforce Development Board can help you with everything from GED prep to vocational training at no cost to you. On the federal level, the Department of Labor's American Job Centers offer a full range of services for job seekers and businesses alike. Visit careeronestop.org, or for more info, just call California's Help Center or visit cwdb.ca.gov or call 916-657-1440. For the City of Los Angeles programs, go to ewd.lacity.gov or call 213-744-7300. All these services are free to help you get your next job. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 is committed to self-care and community well-being. Walk Good LA was formed in June 2020, inspired by the Black Lives Matter movement and the beginning stages of the COVID-19 pandemic. What began as a few minutes of breath work and yoga meditation before protests against police brutality turned into a safe space for the community to heal in hard times. The immensely positive response from the community transformed the momentum into a movement. Today, Walk Good LA is a Black and Brown-led community wellness organization based in Los Angeles. They provide spaces for healing through community yoga classes, guided meditations, hikes, run clubs, and other activations throughout Los Angeles that attract hundreds of members weekly. With the help of Propel and Michael B. Jordan, they now have a yoga and wellness studio in Los Angeles called the Walk Good Yard. To join their mailing list and connect with healing spaces, please visit walkgoodla.org. That's walkgoodla.org. Or find them on Instagram at walkgoodla. This is a community call to action, a community call to healing from KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. The Autopsy Initiative provides a second autopsy free of charge for victims' families who have lost their loved ones due to a police-related death. The services offered through the initiative include the completion of a second autopsy, disclosure of preliminary findings, and a final autopsy report. A police-related death is when an individual is harmed by police officers using deadly force, which results in an individual's death. Police-related death includes in-custody deaths, including those that arise during contact with law enforcement officers during arrest, pursuit, booking, transport, or incarceration. The Autopsy Initiative has a team of board-certified pathologists on call. An autopsy request may be completed by anyone with a close relationship with the victim, which may include the victim's spouse, partner, relative, close friend, or lawyer. To request a free second autopsy for a victim of police violence, please visit knowyourrightscamp.com. That's knowyourrightscamp.com. Then click on Autopsy, then click on Request. At KBLA, we believe in justice for victims of police violence. We say their names, and we don't black down. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about. We have no permanent friends or permanent enemies. Only permanent interests. As we effort to build a more perfect union.
Which I love authors on the show. Matthew Davis is with us. He is here to talk about his new book, A Biography of a Mountain, which just went on sale earlier this month. He's penned a pretty impressive work of narrative nonfiction, exploring issues related to how we memorialize American history. This is a very timely book, being that 2025, it marks the 100th anniversary of the formative plans that would become Mount Rushmore. And for many, it'll be a celebration, but for many others, it's a painful reminder of land loss, of culture loss, and a connection to the earth stripped away. Matthew, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
So first things first, let's talk about the origin story of this book. There are so many things to write about, but talk to us about what got you completely captivated about Mount Rushmore. Why Mount Rushmore? Why now?
Yeah, well, so on July 3rd, 2020, Donald Trump, who was president at the time, gave a speech at Mount Rushmore to celebrate Independence Day and to also mark the first time fireworks were being held at the memorial in over a decade. And, he gave a speech about American history that, in my view, was a bit narrow. And it was a speech also meant to think about how we commemorate and memorialize American history. And so when I read about that speech, I wanted to learn more about why he thought giving that speech at Mount Rushmore made a lot of sense. And so did a deep dive into the memorial, where it was built, why it was built in South Dakota, who built it, how is the relationship to the Lakota Nation and the land of the Black Hills in conversation with Mount Rushmore, and really began to understand that Mount Rushmore is at the center of so many of our American myths, whether it's our westward expansion, our relationship with Native communities, our search for gold, these huge, creative, ambitious projects that we engage with as a country, and these really important key words like democracy, freedom, liberty that mark us as Americans and that are very present at Mount Rushmore. All that came to sort of be part of this broader story that I wanted to tell.
You can't separate the story of Mount Rushmore without talking about the artist who carved the presidential faces into the side of Rushmore, and someone with a very dark past. Talk to us about the artist, which you spent a considerable amount of time in the book talking about them as well.
Yeah, Gunnson Borglum was the artist, and it was really his idea to sort of create Mount Rushmore in the way that it became created. And he's a very complicated, very fascinating figure. He was born in Idaho, present-day Idaho, to Mormon immigrants from Denmark. And as his family moved east, away from where Mormonism was legally practiced, their polygamous family was unable to be legally tenable. And so his mom, his birth mom, was the younger of two sisters who was asked to leave the family when he was about 5 years old. So he never saw her again. And he went on to have a very esteemed career, first as a painter and then as a sculptor when he returned back from Europe. And his past is checkered because before he worked on Mount Rushmore, he was the original sculptor of the Stone Mountain Confederate Memorial just outside of Atlanta, Georgia. And, he was asked to do this sculpture in the summer of 1915. And just a few months after that, the Ku Klux Klan was reborn on top of Stone Mountain, and the Klan had a really deep relationship with the Stone Mountain Memorial. Gunston Borglum, the sculptor of Rushmore, had a very great relationship with Klan leadership. He was very close with many of the leaders. He introduced them to national politicians. And he was someone who really adhered to many different elements of Klan ideology, whether that's being anti-immigrant or anti-Semitic or racist. And Borglum held many of those beliefs. He was eventually fired from Stone Mountain. There was a disagreement in terms of the handling of money. And when he was fired from Stone Mountain, he wrecked the model of the memorial, and that precipitated him being a fugitive from justice as the Stone Mountain Memorial Association sent a police officer to arrest him. And so there's this amazing scene where Gunston Borglum is literally fleeing from Stone Mountain in a getaway car while being chased by police in the dead of night in Georgia. He eventually escapes to South Carolina, makes his way to North Carolina, and just 6 months later, he's on top of Mount Rushmore on October 1st, 1925, dedicating the memorial for the first time.
Are there folks who peddle white supremacist ideology that very much
rendering? This is where authentic voices meet powerful discussions on culture, community, and change. This is where Black voices matter. He's breaking boundaries, amplifying diverse perspectives, and tackling the issues that matter most to you. You're inside A More Perfect Union with Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Amber Payton with BIN News Now. President Trump says he has no involvement in the Jeffrey Epstein investigation. Speaking to reporters in the Oval Office Monday, Trump was asked if he supports releasing all Justice Department files on Epstein.
What I just don't want Epstein to do is detract from the great success of the Republican Party.
The fate of the measure is still unclear. Former University School of Nashville director Armani Reed, who is Black, is suing for at least $21 million, alleging racial discrimination and harassment after his firing last year. Reed claims his complaints about racism were ignored. And NBC Universal is using Sean Diddy Combs' own words against him in his $100 million defamation suit over their making of a Bad Boy documentary. NBC lawyers say Diddy admitted he ruined his own reputation, pointing to his statements at his sentencing and partial conviction as reasons to dismiss the case. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Soaked roads right now, giving us a lot of slow traffic, including on the 101. This is southbound slowing, loading up all the way out of Agora Hills from just about Canaan Road. They're on the brakes and stretches all the way into downtown Los Angeles. The northbound side of the 101 loads up out of downtown LA. You're on the brakes ahead all the way towards Parkway Calabasas. Across the 118, leaving Simi Valley, heading into Porter Ranch, heavy and slow, both sides of the 118. Now the 5 is a huge mess. Both sides. We're going to start out of Santa Clarita, pushing back from just about Cowgrove, delays in both directions to the 605.
Right now, there are young people across the world facing a tough choice. Continue their dream of education or drop out to help their family put food on the table. You can help change their future in a single moment. See how far your support can go at unbound.org.
Is this the time? This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
A couple of highlights and one lowlight from the Rams and Chargers games on Sunday. When Rams wide receiver Devontae Adams caught a 1-yard touchdown pass from quarterback Matthew Stafford, it was the 1,000th career catch for Adams in his 11-year career. Stafford's 2 touchdown passes yesterday gives him 27 this season, tops in the NFL. As for the lowlight, the Chargers gave up a season-high 192 yards rushing at Jacksonville and 4 rushing touchdowns. The Chargers got manhandled at the line of scrimmage. Fortunately for the Chargers, the 192 yards rushing is not the most allowed by a team this season. The Carolina Panthers gave up 374 yards rushing to the New York Giants on October 12th. Top 5 college football teams in this week's top 25 rankings: Ohio State, Tabitha Smiley's Indiana Hoosiers, Texas A&M, Georgia, and Mississippi. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
All I need is one mic.
With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Tavis Smiley. Let me be clear about what we're witnessing here. A textbook case of talking about communities instead of talking with them. Pedro Pizarro, president and CEO of Edison International, found time this week to sit down with the LA Times to discuss their so-called fast pay program for those impacted by the Altadena-Eaton Canyon fire. We think it is neither fast nor fair, but when we organized the community town hall, Southern California Edison first confirmed participation and then abruptly canceled. There was no time available on Mr. Pizarro's calendar for a face-to-face conversation with the individuals and families who have lost everything due to the negligence of Southern California Edison. This is not an accident. This is a choice about who deserves direct engagement and who gets managed through press statements. When you talk to the LA Times about people, you control the narrative. You get to frame the issues on your terms, with your spin, filtered through journalists who may or may not push back. But when you show up to a town hall, you face real questions from real people experiencing real problems. There's no PR buffer. There's real accountability. This pattern of being available to corporate media, but unavailable for community dialogue, sends a clear message about whose voices matter and whose don't. It's the kind of disrespect that hides behind busy schedules and prior commitments, but the community sees right through it. If these issues are important enough to discuss with the LA Times, they're important enough to discuss directly with the people living them. Anything less isn't just disrespectful, it's a fundamental failure of leadership and accountability. Mr. Pizarro says in the LA Times interview, I need to go to the supermarket in Pasadena or Altadena and be able to look people in the eye. We want to do the right thing for our community. You had a chance to look folk in the eye at our town hall meeting last week, but you didn't show up. And then we invited you for a one-on-one conversation here at the station, but you have yet to confirm. So please, please stop with the gaslighting. With the KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Tavis Smiley, and as always, we welcome your feedback.
It's never too early to start talking about money in realistic ways with your kids. JP Morgan Chase navigates how to educate your kids now about creating long-lasting, healthy money habits. Whether your kids are in elementary school, high school, or college, now is a great time to start a conversation about ways to create healthy money habits as they grow, ultimately benefiting their financial future. Talking about money in a realistic way to support your kids' lifestyle and dreams, your first banking account geared towards high school or college. It's never too early. Explaining the basics, what you earn and what you spend, building financial confidence starts with getting organized. Learning and practicing vital money skills now will stay with them for life. Tools they will have to stay on top of their finances and achieve their goals. This segment is sponsored by JP Morgan Chase.
Hit me! National News The Consequence. Informed opinion. And analysis beyond the headlines. You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.
Are there folks who peddle in white supremacist ideology that very much see Mount Rushmore and its history as a symbol of their cause?
I think when he first got to Rushmore, there are some indications that that was the case. I think there was a letter that I discovered in the archives of Borglum's papers from someone who is affiliated with the Ku Klux Klan in South Dakota that was very happy that Borglum was going to come and sculpt this mountain in the way that he wanted to because of the way that Borglum's thought was reflected at Stone Mountain and potentially at Mount Rushmore. I think it depends now who you talk to. I mean, many people would bristle at the idea that Rushmore reflects some sort of white supremacist ideology, but there are other people that insist that that's actually the case. I think that it really depends on how you are thinking about the memorial, how you're thinking about American history, and how you're thinking about the narratives that are able to explain our history. Because, as you know, our history is very complicated, it's very fraught, and how you perceive it is oftentimes how you perceive what Mount Rushmore is doing as a memorial.
Matthew, talk to us about some of the economic and political forces that collided to shape the whole reason around the creation of this memorial. Because as you know, things don't just happen in a vacuum. And like so many other monuments, they are in opening, they represent an opportunity for us to more deeply understand the times.
Yeah, thank you for that. This is my favorite part of the story, actually, because I think because what Mount Rushmore is today, how big it is, how ambitious it is, many people just assume that it was the federal government that was behind it from the start, when really the idea for a sculpture in the Black Hills came from a state historian, the South Dakota state historian named Doane Robinson, who was really concerned about the economic state of South Dakota. At the time, in the early 1920s, the state was going through a very rough economic patch. It was sort of experiencing the Great Depression about a decade before the rest of the country was. The agricultural and commodities markets had tanked, banks were closing, farms were foreclosing, people were unemployed, and Doane Robinson thought it was important to diversify the state's economy. And to do that, he wanted to build a sculpture in the Black Hills and attract these many different car tourists that were then driving around that area. And his idea was to create a sculpture that reflected the character and characters of the American West. So he actually wanted initially to sculpt the great Lakota leader Red Cloud, or Lewis and Clark, or Sacagawea, or George Armstrong Custer. And that was his idea. And that's kind of a sliding doors moment for the memorial, because if those were the figures that were in the Black Hills, I wonder if we would have been thinking about Rushmore in the same way that we think about it today, as this really politically charged piece of art that reflects the United States and American empire.
And so talk to us about the politics of how these very specific presidents got onto Mount Rushmore. We know that the current president, President Trump, at least has jokingly, talked about wanting his face in Mount Rushmore. Talk to us about the politics of who got chosen and who almost made the cut.
Yeah, well, so there has been legislation introduced to include President Trump. It's not been passed. We can talk about that in a moment. But, when Gunther Borglum was hired to do Mount Rushmore, he changed the idea from one of characters of the American West to a project that he wanted to reflect the American political system, that he wanted to reflect American empire. So he chose the 4 presidents on the mountain, and he thought they each represented different stages and phases of American empire. So obviously you have Washington as birth, Jefferson as expansion, Lincoln as preservation or saving the Union, and Theodore Roosevelt came to represent the unification of the Union through the Panama Canal. And, Roosevelt was also a close friend of Borglum's, and so there's some speculation that he was on there not just for his politics, but for his personal relationship with Gunther Borglum. And there weren't many other people that were ever considered seriously. There was a time in the 1930s where there was a push to have Susan B. Anthony on Mount Rushmore. And Borglum encouraged that speculation. He never really gave it serious thought, but he thought it would be a way to increase funds at the memorial to sort of keep this option available. And so that was one person that almost made it on. But really, from the very beginning, Gunther Borglum wanted those 4 men on the mountain, and that's what he got, and that's who is still there. And with regards to President Trump on Mount Rushmore, as I mentioned, there is legislation that has been introduced. Most people you speak to say that there is no space for a 5th face on Mount Rushmore, and that if there was to be a 5th face, it'd have to be either different in size and scope to the other ones there, or they'd have to sort of impact the current design of the memorial to add another face. And so I don't think either of those things are going to happen, but this president has destroyed the East Wing of the White House. So who knows what he would want to do to Mount Rushmore.
Yeah. One of the reviewers of your book, Marcia Chatelain, Pulitzer Prize winning author of Franchise, The Golden Arches in Black America, in reaction to your book, she called it a thoughtful reflection on the dangers of sanitizing history and the use of landmarks to tell incomplete histories of violence and injustice. She says that your story of One Mountain speaks volumes about culture, conflict, and a need for consciousness raising. There seems to be a lot of sanitizing of history that is afoot, and that's putting it politely. There's a lot of censorship that we are seeing in the media, a lot of bending of the knee that we're seeing from leaders of industry. Talk to us about what Mount Rushmore represents to you and what you hope it represents to readers when it comes to, summoning the courage to address these dangers of sanitizing history in real time?
Thank you for that question. Yeah, and Marcia is a fantastic writer and scholar in her own right, and I encourage all your listeners to read her work. But when I first visited Mount Rushmore, this was before 9/11, so in the spring of 2000, there was no indication at the memorial that the Lakota had been and still were on the Black Hills land, that there was no real effort to tell the broader story of the history of Mount Rushmore. And that changed in 2004 when there was the first Native American superintendent, a man named Gerard Baker, took over as the leader of Mount Rushmore and began to introduce different Native American themes to the memorial, as Baker had done throughout his career in the National Park Service. And what that meant for Rushmore was that suddenly to the left of the sculpture, there was a Lakota heritage village. Baker hired Native American interpreters to tell the stories of their tribes. He hired and encouraged cultural performers like hoop dancers to come to Mount Rushmore and be able to perform. And so it opened and widened the aperture of Rushmore to tell a broader story of the Black Hills, what happened on that land, who was displaced, and why it matters. And I think what you're seeing now, just 20 years from that time period, is President Trump has written executive orders sort of claiming and demanding that our national parks do not present material that quote unquote disparages Americans. And what's concerning about that is if you're going to tell the full story of a place, if you're going to tell the full story about Mount Rushmore, you need to be able to go into those darker parts of the history. And, I think it says something about us if we're unwilling to be able to think about those issues, if we're unwilling and unable to confront those darknesses, because most of us want to be able to have the full story and then make our own decisions on how we want to interpret it. And so for me, the meaning of Mount Rushmore is something that I think is really important to interrogate and think about. And we can have a lot of different things going on at once. We need to have a singular meaning to a place. We can hold all these different thoughts of patriotism, of freedom, of democracy, of problematic history, of empire in one place and understand it in a complicated way that I think is important.
Let's talk about land justice, for example. It's one of the topics that I've thoroughly enjoyed talking about, especially recently when I'm not covering the White House or covering national politics. I've been serving in residence for a project called the Black Land Loss Narrative Archive Project, talking to descendants who've experienced Black land loss across the country. And what really stood out to me in your book is, you make note of the NDN Collective, an indigenous-led and run organization in Rapid City, whose clarion call of land back, it fits into this long trajectory of Native American activism. Talk to us about the state of the fight to return the land to the Native people. So many people, think that, Mount Rushmore was just sort of sitting there and,
right.
and was just available to this artist. But there was land loss that was experienced by the Native Americans there. And it's more than just a little bit awkward that you have, this symbol of American history that's on land that didn't belong to the artist, but it's land that the federal government claims nonetheless.
It's such an important point. And, that's why what Gerard Baker did was so important, because as I said, when I first went there, you would have no indication that this land was originally in Lakota hands. And that history traces itself back to a treaty that was signed in 1868 called the Treaty of Fort Laramie, which the United States actually sued for peace. The Lakota were attacking different military forts and communities on land that was theirs, that the United States was trying to move in on. And the U.S. could not defeat the Lakota, and so they sued for peace, and in exchange for peace gave the Lakota a very broad swath of land in the western part of the United States, which today includes all of western South Dakota, which includes the Black Hills of South Dakota, which of course is where Mount Rushmore is today. And it was just a few years after that treaty was signed that George Armstrong Custer led his 7th Cavalry through the Black Hills of South Dakota on what was supposed to be a military mission, but everyone knew he was trying to find gold, and he did find gold. His team found gold, and when they found gold in August 1874, the entire trajectory of the Black Hills changed. People began to flood into the Black Hills in search for gold. Before then, it was illegal for Americans to be in the Black Hills due to this treaty, but President Ulysses S. Grant could not stop the influx of miners, and so he decided to change the trajectory of the Native American communities in that area. He ordered everyone to go to federally run reservations. Those that did not go to federally run reservations would be quote unquote rounded up. And to do that rounding up, he sent his military out west, including Custer, including the 7th Cavalry. And when he was defeated at the Battle of Little Bighorn in 1876, what the Lakota called the Battle of Greasy Grass, the United States was outraged, and they decided to seize the Black Hills in 1877. And it's that seizure that's really at the heart of the debate of the land loss that you're describing, because not too long after that land was illegally seized, right around the time after that Mount Rushmore was being created, the Lakota began a decades-long series of legal claims against the United States that ultimately proved successful. And in 1980, the Supreme Court validated and affirmed lower court decisions that said the United States illegally violated the 1868 Treaty of Fort Laramie, illegally seized the Black Hills, and needed to pay $102 million to the Lakota for that compensation. And the Lakota refused the money, and they still refuse the money. And the money has grown in interest to over $1 billion today. But what the Lakota want is they want the land back. They want the political solution, not the economic solution. Now, it's hard, and you know a lot about this, it's hard from the perspectives of today to imagine a scenario when the United States would give over the land back to the Lakota. But there are some sort of situations where you can think a little bit about maybe co-stewardship. What if Native tribes were managing all the federally owned land in the Black Hills or in that part of the country? Those are things that I think can be discussed about, may be possible, but it's hard to envision a scenario where the United States would just simply give over all this land that it took from the Lakota or from any other Native American tribes across the continent.
I mean, a fascinating story. It really shines a light on land justice and how the fight for land justice continues. Oftentimes I think it gets narrowly put in the reparations bucket. But as you know, it's so much bigger than that. I mean, the fact that the Supreme Court ruled on this and said, hey, United States government, give them $102 million, which has now climbed, to your point, to well over $1 billion. And they're like, no, we asked for the land. We want the land. We don't want compensation. And so, these stories, these challenges to the acquisition of land are not going anywhere. For folks that are really looking to dig in to the origin story of so many challenges that continue to persist, you definitely want to check out this book. Again, it is called A Biography of a Mountain, The Making and Meaning of a Mount Rushmore. I'm sort of totally geeking out around how relevant this story is today. This is not just looking back on history in the rearview mirror, but if we really want to understand the state of play when it comes to land justice in the United States, if we really want to take a serious look at, how memorials come to be and, the sanitizing of American history in real time, you absolutely want to check out this book. Matthew, in our remaining minute, what do you most want, particularly young people, right, who, might listen to this on a podcast, may not be all that interested in thumbing through every chapter of this book, but what do you want young people, the Gen Z folk, to walk away with after having read your book?
Yeah, so two things. One, first of all, I think the other element to the Black Hills is that, for the Lakota, the Black Hills are sacred. They call it the heart of everything that is. And so it's about land justice, but it's also about, a spiritual home that the Lakota have, that now this memorial is built on that land. And, I think, the biggest takeaway I'd love for readers to get is the idea that memorials and monuments are not static. And I think that's something that I came to terms with in the reporting and writing of this book, is that just because there's a memorial carved into the granite of the Black Hills, just because there are monuments on our National Mall in Washington, D.C., doesn't mean that those meanings are as solid as what they're built out of. They change, they evolve as we evolve as people, as our country evolves. And you said it exactly right. When I was doing this project initially, I thought I was writing a book about the past. I did, but I also wrote a book about the present, about how we were thinking about our historical narratives and how those narratives are monumentalized, memorialized. And I think that is what I really want people to think about, is how they are, how they change, and how they evolve.
Our thanks to Matthew Davis, the author of A Biography of the Mountain, The Making and Meaning of Mount Rushmore. Run, don't walk to pick this up. Again, if we want to understand what's happening in the now, you got to do a look back to look forward, or as my dean in graduate school used to say, you got to go deeper to go higher. And so our thanks to Matthew Davis for joining us. You've been listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.
Striving to make America a nation as good as its promise. This is A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
1 in 5 Black adults ages 70 and older is living with Alzheimer's disease, or AD, and the risk is twice as high compared to white adults. But AD isn't just forgetting a name or losing track of time. Signs of early AD could be repeating questions, missing appointments, or struggling with bills and daily tasks. These things aren't a normal part of aging. Here's the good news. Treatments are available that may help if AD is diagnosed early. If you notice changes in memory or daily routines, whether in yourself or a loved one, don't wait. Early diagnosis and intervention are key to managing AD effectively. To learn more about AD and a potential treatment option, visit treatalsearly.com. That's treatalzearly.com to learn more about the signs and symptoms and a potential treatment option. This message is brought to you by AZI.
You're still glowing, flirting, grooving. You still got it. But your immune system weakens as you age, making it harder to fight flu, pneumococcal pneumonia, RSV, and COVID-19. Vaccines are a key part of any health routine and help strengthen your immune response. Ask your doctor or pharmacist which vaccines you need. Schedule in minutes at vaxassist.com. Sponsored by Pfizer.
An official message from Medicare.
Medicare plans change from one year to the next. And this year, it's important for you to review your current coverage and compare all your options during Medicare open enrollment. Compare health plans, drug coverage, and costs. See if you can save some money, and don't forget to make sure your drugs are covered. Open enrollment ends December 7th. Visit Medicare.gov or call 1-800-MEDICARE.
Paid for by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. The Los Angeles Regional Food Bank is on a mission to fight hunger and provide nutritious food to those in need across our community. They partner with federal, state, and local programs advocating for better policies and funding for critical hunger relief programs like Cal Fresh, the Emergency Food Assistance Program, and the Child and Adult Care Food Program. The food bank works with coalitions and local representatives to make sure hunger is addressed in every district of LA County. They also run nutrition education campaigns, raise hunger awareness, and source nutritious food for distribution, all while supporting regulations that allow food pantries to operate safely. Want to help? Visit lafoodbank.org or call 323-234-3030 to volunteer or find a food bank near you. Together, we can ensure that no one goes hungry in Los Angeles County. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Notable journalists, industry leaders, lawmakers, change makers, tastemakers, and you working to build a more perfect union on KBLA Talk 1580.
In our remaining moments, time for the quiet part out loud. A little breaking news here. The Corporation for Public Broadcasting has agreed today to fulfill a $36 million multi-year contract with NPR that it had yanked after pressure from the Trump White House. NPR is reporting that the arrangement resolves litigation filed by NPR accusing the corporation of illegally yielding to Trump's demands that the network be financially punished for its news coverage. The argument, part of a broader lawsuit by NPR and several stations against the Trump administration, it focused on the Corporation for Public Broadcasting's funding for NPR's operations of a satellite distribution system for local public radio stations. NPR announced today that it would waive all fees for the stations associated with the satellite service. The judge in the case had explicitly told the Corporation for Public Broadcasting's legal team that he did not find its defense credible. CPB lawyers had argued that the decision to award the contract to a new consortium of public media institutions was driven by a desire to foster digital innovation more swiftly. And so, look, bottom line, NPR is not dead. The Trump White House sort of sought to pull public funding from NPR, and it doesn't look like that's going to happen. I'm sure there's going to be much more analysis in the coming days around this, but NPR is reporting that the Corporation for Public Broadcasting has agreed to revive a $36 million deal with NPR that was killed after Trump's pressure. And so we're seeing a reversal here, which is good news for NPR. It's good news for folks in public media. It's good news for a free press. It's encouraging. And we'll keep our eye on this as the story continues to develop. We'll have to leave it there. My thanks to the entire village that helps us produce a more perfect union each and every day. Our executive producer, Tavis Smiley, our sound engineer, Brother Andy, to our show producers, Faraji, Art, and Journey, and to each and every one of you, all of our leaders, learners, and listeners. We hope you have enjoyed the show today. For all of our leaders, learners, and listeners in LA, stay dry, stay safe. For everyone, everywhere, do what you can from where you are with what you have, but by all means, do something. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey. You've been listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.